Welcome to Delenta Activate, the podcast that brings you insights and stories from executive coaches and changemakers in the leadership space. I'm your host, Dr. Naeema Pasha from Delenta, and I'm excited to share with you the latest trends, best practices, and innovations in coaching and leadership development. In this podcast, you'll hear from experts who successfully coach leaders and teams to achieve their goals and overcome challenges and transform their organisations. Whether you're a coach, a leader, or someone who wants to grow personally and professionally, this is the podcast for you. So tune in, get inspired, and activate your potential with Delenta Activate. Hi there, hello, and welcome to Delenta Activate episode with me, Dr. Naeema Pasha. I'm really excited to have with us a leading light, I'd say, in coaching, mentoring. I think something we can all learn from, and that's Sharon Lawton. Welcome today, Sharon.
Oh, thank you for that lovely introduction, Naeema. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you. Honestly, it's really good. And I just wanted to say before we start, you're an award-winning coach, business mentor, and you've done a whole. Looking through your background, really devoted, I'd say, to this world of coaching and developing people, and a real strong driver, kind of almost purposeful in that. And that's what when I was looking at your background and finding more about you, I really felt that. Would you see that? Would you say that's right? Would you feel that what I'm saying about this purpose and drive that you have about enabling people to grow and develop?
Yeah, I thank you for that. I would consider myself to be a values-driven coach and leader as well. So I'm part of the senior management team at the Coaching Academy. Yeah, I feel that there are so many of us who are looking for purpose in our lives, and coaching is just that particular medium that can release that untapped potential. So, yeah, I really love coaching, and it's something that just sort of ignited within me when I first came across it back in 2008.
Well, I was going to say actually, because coaching is everywhere. People I've heard saying coaching is the new black. We've got this whole kind of like a cult. People saying we need a coaching culture, organization have a coaching culture. Perhaps we should enable, younger generations, Gen Z coming out. Maybe there should be more coaching culture. But you've worked in this field, reading your 25 years. You said about learning in learning and development, and perhaps being introduced this. Why is it become so popular now? How have we harnessed this kind of like, right, coaching is important? Because you'll know this particularly for being at the Coaching Academy, I think.
Yeah, I think in the UK we were a little bit behind the curve because pre 1999 coaching was really big back in the States, in the US. And if anyone in the UK wanted to train to be a coach, it was pretty much only available via a distance learning package from the USA. And then gradually, coaching started to burst onto the scene here in the UK and has grown exponentially. Interestingly, during the pandemic, it's probably one of the few industries that has grown and developed even more as a profession and as an industry during that particular time. And I think some of that is to do with the fact that I can only speak for myself and those within my network. It was a time when a lot of us sort of stopped and reflected on what we wanted out of life. And as a result of that, I had so many clients during that time because I was coaching online anyway at that time. So it was very easy for me to continue my coaching work. They were saying to me, there must be more to life than this. It gave people that opportunity to press reset and get off the hamster wheel that potentially they may have been on. So really interesting, I think, the way that it has grown. And whereas I think up until probably the last sort of 20 years, there was a lot of profile around industries such as counseling and therapy,
Yeah.
consultancy and that type of thing, and mentoring. And coaching was sort of still in its infancy, and there was a lot of association then as it started to come up. So I think sometimes people in the UK were a little bit reluctant to share that perhaps they've got a coach, Whereas now, I think much more it's celebrated to say, oh, yeah, I'm working with my coach, or, I've been assigned a business coach, or I'm working with a life coach. And it's much more celebrated now. So I think, the visibility is raised. More people are aware of coaching. It used to be, I think, in my experience anyway, it was sort of seen as a business or a
Mm.
corporate type of offering. And sometimes it was for those high performing individuals or high performing teams who wanted to, they knew how to take action, they knew how to set goals, but they realized they could do it much more quickly and more effectively if they were working with a coach. But since then, and as you mentioned, sort of Gen Z, I think much more now it's readily available, and our younger generation have an expectation to go into a career or into a workplace, and as part of their sort of working in kind benefits or packages available to them, they are looking to be developed. And so
Mm.
a semi expectation that a coach or coaching could or might be available to them.
I really like what you're saying there. And there's something that I felt when you were saying about this transition that organizations and individuals are making to sort of adopting coaching as a legitimate practice, because is a really good thing. And obviously we can talk about how you feel it might transform people and organizations. But I do think, and this is, I think, something which I'd like to ask you more about. When I started working in this field, there was like various people set themselves up as a coach, you know this, and I met a few people, early doors, as a while ago, and I remember one chap who had a very good career in TV. I know you've worked in that as well, but and then did a short coaching course and set up as a coach. And I had a conversation, and I was worried about this person being out there with not with sort of an overnight book on this is how to do coaching. You at the coaching academy, and you are head of your title. I'm just looking for, you're head of coaching, aren't you? Head of training and
Yeah,
development.
head of
Yeah,
coach education and business
exactly.
development. Yeah.
Well, you play this, honestly, I have to say this, you play this incredible role that we need because of that, because it's something where, you talked about counseling, so that has a structure, and you have to have accreditation, you have these things, and maybe people go into specialisms like psychodynamic, or they go for
Mm.
human centered. But tell me a little bit more about how we can make, because particularly with your role, because this is what I'm really excited about with you, how we can make coaching, people see that this is a credible thing, and what we need to do, what you need to do really to continue that. Would that be all right? Because I'm really excited about what you're doing.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm 100% in alignment with you. I'm so glad that you asked that question, because you're right. At the moment, coaching is an unregulated industry.
Mm.
And so it's really important that for anyone out there who's listening or knows somebody who might be actively looking to work with a coach, that they do their due diligence and research the people that they are looking potentially to work with. Because there are a lot of people out there that call themselves coaches, you're absolutely right. But what we are looking at the coaching academy to do, and we're really sort of looking to be sort of leaders in this particular area, is to raise the importance of working with an accredited, professionally trained coach who knows and understands ethics, so can work with their clients both safely and ethically, also knows how to support them. And we're not there to rescue, we're not there to tell people what to do, we're there to unlock their potential within. And so when you work with a professionally accredited, professionally trained coach, they will understand core coaching competencies. Their training will be in alignment with professional coaching membership bodies, such as the Association for Coaching, such as the ICF, such as the EMCC. And so, therefore, there are guidelines and boundaries to work within that keeps the client safe, but it also keeps the coach safe as well. And so, just like in the counselling and therapy sector, there is a guidelines to work within. It keeps the clients safe in the knowledge that they are practicing ethically and safely, and they have a full depth of knowledge. it's the same, in our opinion, at the Coaching Academy for coaches as well. And I think that's absolutely right. I think, people deserve to be working with a coach who has been properly trained, because there are nuances, of the type of questioning to ask, how to support a client if perhaps they are stuck, also listening out for, things like negative self-talk, and just respectfully and gently challenging what we call limiting beliefs that might be keeping somebody stuck and not being able to move forward, what they're telling themselves about their self-identity. Having particular models and frameworks and a huge toolbox to be able to reach from to support clients to achieve what they are looking to achieve and beyond that, because there is so much untapped potential in every single one of us. So yeah, definitely at the Coaching Academy, that's sort of first and foremost. We really sort of support the industry in raising awareness of the importance of credentialed coaches, and also, what to do, and to encourage those trained credential coaches to keep their knowledge and skill updated by being lifelong learners, and that's really important too.
That's amazing. I'm so glad I popped the lid on that with you, because I really felt, because it is unregulated, and many, obviously many industries are, but we tend to, in life, if we're going to get somebody in to fix our cupboards, needed, new kitchen worktop or something, or we want to get somebody who would recommend, and, just we go for these things, even that. But when we're talking about things which are around the mind and our development and our growth and our, whatever we want to go into, then I just wanted to really say that I think I really applaud you for the work that you're doing in that, because it still is, anyone can set up, can't they, at the moment. So really recommend what you've said and endorse that. And just to go into a little bit more detail about that, can I ask you about AI coaching as well, and say, well, because software developers can now develop it, can't they? They can just get something to, using an AI tool, using emotional AI, conversational AI, to develop something which is quite rudimentary. What's your thoughts on that, particularly from the perspective of, should we say, quality, reassurance, that kind of thing?
Mm, yeah, again, lovely question. And how long have we got? I mean,
I know.
that's a huge area,
I
right?
know, I know.
So I'm going to scratch the surface and give my personal opinion, of
That's
course,
brilliant.
and that's all that, I'm speaking from my own personal opinion as a credentialed coach. So there are always, positives, pros and cons, positives and negatives with any type of technology. And I think if it's used safely and if it's used with a positive intention, it can only support us. However, I've already been talking about ethics
Yeah.
and the way in which we carefully within the industry support our clients to achieve their outcome. So I'm a little bit, well, I'm not sitting on the fence. I sit the other side of the fence, I think,
Oh,
in
brilliant.
as much as AI generated coaching. Personally, it's not an area that I align with as something that maybe I'll be proved wrong in the future. I don't know. But I just don't think there's any substitute for that human connection, that real human connection, the empathy, the real active listening, the nuances of being able to sort of calibrate your client's skin tone or slight
Mm,
shifts in body language and things when you ask them a curious question or are gently challenging them on something,
mm,
and building up a psychologically safe space with a real person, to me, just feels much more authentic. I mean, authenticity is one of my driving values. So, being able to create a rapportful, safe, authentic connection with my clients is so important. So, for me, yeah, AI coaching is not something that. I mean, who knows? I may be proved wrong. Maybe they said years ago that calculators would never take on, and here we are. But I personally can't see it. Coaching is that human connection. there's a place for it perhaps, but certainly not, I feel, for good deep work that is going to really shift people towards,
Mm.
exceeding their, sort of thoughts and goals and dreams and aspirations.
That's really good to hear. I was also going to ask, would you, if it did come, would you regulate it? I was going to say, would you? Yeah,
100%.
good.
100%.
Because good.
I mean,
That's
I'm
all I
in
need to know.
alignment with definitely in alignment with regulating the coaching industry. Full stop. I definitely sit there. I think if we regulate coaching so that all coaches are working within ethical guidelines and core competencies, that can only be good for all of us. So 100% AI, and yeah, I would advocate sort of regulating the industry anyway.
Sharon, honestly, I kind of think I'm a bit of a free spirit. Look, I've got dangly earrings. I'm like a free person and kind of do my crazy stuff, but also believe in this, what you talk about, this regulation, which was kind of almost sounds the opposite of what I feel I should be. And like, oh, let it be, it'll work out. But I really do support you and kind of want to champion you more around this, because I think, and it's come from the experiences of when I started talking to people who've done the short courses or read a book, or set themselves up as a coach, and having those conversations with them about things I was worried about for myself, and how, I don't know, disconcert. I felt all kind of like a bit out of sorts at the end of it, as you'd know, when coaching doesn't go well. So from that experience, I'm really hopeful that when I coach, I don't do that, and I hope when that people can reflect on that. But if you set yourself up to do your own coaching and you don't have that, so that's why I'm really kind of like, yes, thank you for being here and setting those things out and doing all the things you do. And you mentioned your values a couple of times. You mentioned two of your values. Just tell us a bit more about what your values are, and then I was going to ask you, but I'll say now, how do you know, what processes can people go through to understand their values better? So tell us about your values, and then how we could all in that.
So my values are sort of, to quote Simon Sinek, my why.
Yeah.
Why I get up in the morning, what really motivates me and what drives me. And I know when my values are out of alignment, because I just get this sort of, you talk about being a free spirit, I just sort of get this sort of
Yeah.
weird energy. It just doesn't feel right. And often when I'm coaching in organizations and with executives, if their values are out of alignment, perhaps with the company values, they can often struggle to understand why it is they don't feel fully fulfilled. So when we are in alignment with our values, we start to, feel fulfilled, and we're thriving, and we feel purposeful. So my personal values are around authenticity, honesty. It's all about sort of supporting and inspiring others to grow and develop, because part of that is my own desire to grow and develop. And I also have a very strong achievement driver, which is why I'm sort of always looking to sort of how can I improve myself to be the best coach that I can be, not for myself, but for my clients, because I want them to have the best possible experience. And that's the reason why I'm constantly looking at how I can improve myself. So that's sort of where my values sit. I do values elicitation with my clients. And there are some really nice models and exercises, values elicitation exercises that coaches are able to take clients through to allow them to start to sort of look at a whole list of values words and select the ones that jump out to them. And then by a process of elimination, we start to reduce them down, reduce them down, reduce them down. And then what we're able to do then is to start to coach around how are you living your values, or how are your values showing up at work. Or if you want to be a values driven or values based leader, how are you walking your talk? So if you say that honesty is your value, one of your top values, how is that playing out in the workplace? How do you demonstrate honesty in your behaviors? Because it's really interesting. Sometimes people will say that a particular, some is a value of this. Let's say authenticity. Authenticity is a key value for them, but it doesn't show up in their behaviour. There's definitely a disconnect there. And I remember, it was long while ago now, I was working alongside Shell UK, the
Mm.
corporation based, and they were on the South Bank at the time. It was a really long time ago. And I was coaching some of their working parents, their executives. And we did some values elicitation work. And one particular client I was working with said that family was one of their key values, core values. And what was really interesting was that it wasn't showing up. And so the quality time spent with family was very limited. And what we were able to do was coach around how they were able to demonstrate that. And so what we ended up doing was carving out some appointment time in
Oh,
their diary, because appointments were never cancelled in professional life.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so if it was put in the diary, family time, then it would actually happen. And that way, this particular executive felt much more in alignment with their core values, because we had sort of looked at how potentially they could bring that into their daily working life.
It sounds wonderful. And some work I was looking at just yesterday in the business school was around how in leadership, people are struggling with their leaders because the leaders have gone from a technical role promoted up. You know how it is. And it's still happening, even though we've known about this perhaps in the last 40 years of leadership development, but not developing the leadership skills, which are about people, values, and all this. So your work is really critical, really, to enable people to start. Did you say the untapped potential that we all have? So the untapped potential that leaders could have. I mean, this could really push forward productivity, engagement. How can we do more to get businesses to listen to do more work with you, Sharon? Essentially,
Well, funny you should say that. But no, I mean, there was a report released, I think it was the early part of this year. It was a survey that was done by Gallup, and they do it every year, State of the Global Workforce report. And it actually showed scarily that the majority of the world's workforce were disengaged. I think it was
I remember
something
seeing that.
like
Yeah, yeah,
23% were engaged, something like that. It was a really low figure. So you think about the cost to
yeah.
businesses if their workforce is disengaged. And some of that, you spoke about leadership development and technical managers being promoted. And so, if we go back to social learning theory, so if we go right back to how do children learn things? They learn by what's modeled to them, social learning theory. And if we bring that into what we're talking about today, how do we learn leadership? Probably by what's been modeled to us by a leader. Now, that might be helpful, might not be particularly helpful. Or what we perceive a leader, quote unquote, should be, or what the culture of the organization sort of, the unwritten rules. This is what a leader, quote unquote, should be. And I think that's sometimes why women executives might struggle, because it's
Yeah.
in sort of out of alignment. So, certainly now, what we know is that a coaching approach to leadership is the one that actually gets the results. It increases productivity, it increases engagement, employee engagement, it develops the team, and it moves teams and organizations along the performance curve, Sir John Whitmore's performance curve, to move them into an interdependent culture where we are all truly successful because we are working together, rather than, well, I'm a high performer, but I'm working independently of the team. So that's where that coaching culture comes in. And we do quite a lot of work here at the Coaching Academy, working with organisations. And we've got a programme that's called the Leader as Coach, where we do go in and we take organisations through a programme of teaching their middle leaders, senior leaders, emerging leaders through how to use coaching as an approach to their leadership. And it is absolutely incredible when you see how leaders start to embrace this approach in their leadership, and the results are absolutely transformative, not just for the teams and the people that they are managing, but for the leaders themselves.
It's amazing. I mean, I think we talk about untapped potential of individuals. You talked about untapped potential of UK PLC in a way that
Oh gosh, yeah.
we could progress. And honestly, and I'm also super excited that you mentioned social learning theory. That was in my thesis, and I've not heard it since then.
Oh
So
really?
I'm like, oh,
Oh,
that's fantastic. The other thing you talked about was Gallup as well, and I know you were interested in values assessment, which is obviously very much part of what Gallup did. But you've moved more into another area. Can you tell me a bit more, or tell us a little bit more about that, so we can go dig a little bit deeper into some of the
yeah.
tools used?
So my background has always been in corporate learning and development. So ever since I started my career, as I sort of started to sort of formulate what I wanted to do, that to develop myself and people started to emerge. And when I left the corporate environment to take a career back to have my children, and then I retrained as a coach, during my coach training, I came across DISC psychometric personality profiling. And I'd come across psychometric profiling before in my learning and development role. And I'm not saying that one is any
No,
better
no.
than any others at all. But for me, this felt like it was the missing piece of the puzzle because, as you've probably already ascertained, I'm quite curious about people. I love finding out about people and people watching and things. And it enabled me to sort of understand the why behind people's behavior. And as I started to embrace the DISC model, which all comes from Carl Jung's theories, but when then was
Yeah.
developed by William Marsden and is now a really popular profiling tool, it helps leaders, it helps all of us actually understand ourselves, why we do what we do, and why we communicate in the way that we communicate. Because, well, I don't know, what do you think? People like people who are like themselves. We sort of surround ourselves with people that are similar to us, don't we? Because we don't have to work at it, it's easy. But then sometimes we meet somebody who, no matter how hard we try, we just don't seem to be able to click with them.
Mm.
And this tool helps us not just to understand our own behavior and communication preferences, but also then the behavior and the communication preferences of those around us. And then, of course, as you know, we can't change others, we can only change ourselves. We look at the positive intention behind perhaps how somebody is behaving or trying to communicate with us. And then we modify our preference to start to come into more alignment with the person that we are engaging with. So, for example, I'm quite fast paced. I talk fast and make decisions quickly. But some of my clients and some of the people that I've interacted with in my personal and professional life are slightly more reserved. They're deep thinkers. And before I realised this, I used to be thinking to myself, oh, come on, hurry up, just get to the point. Can you just answer me? Now I appreciate and know, and this has built obviously my emotional intelligence even more, that,
Mm.
it may not be that, they're delaying just to wind me up or get on my nerves. They literally are more reflective and they need to think it through before they talk about it. Conversely, the other way around, there are people who are more reserved and they might be thinking, oh, come on, just slow down a bit, like, give me a chance to get a word in. And so that way they're able to understand that they can maybe pick up the pace a little bit. So when we narrow the gap in our differences, that helps us to get the best out of our interactions. And in leadership, transformative, because if we are leading according to our preference of outgoing or reserved or task or people, then we might not get the best out of our teams, because also our dispreferences start to reveal our motivational drivers and our behavior fears, fears of rejection or fears of failure or fears of criticism. And
Mm.
once we know that about our teams, we can play to people's strengths and also make sure that our teams have a really good mix, so that actually we don't miss those valuable strengths that everybody brings to the project or to the team.
Oh goodness, I think that's fantastic, and I echo and support whenever I run personality, led kind of things to examine similar things. So there's always somebody that wouldn't mind you commenting. There's always somebody there who feels so relieved that they've had this. I can be me. So this is me. So because they've perhaps been brought up in a family or a culture where there couldn't be like you just said about super talkative or super, the opposite, being like they had to fit in one way. So I think it's amazing that you do these things.
Yeah, I mean, one example of that recently, I was working with some middle leaders, emerging leaders. We were doing an aspiring middle leadership program. And I was leading a workshop and doing some coaching around using DISC for them to understand their leadership strengths. And there's one particular style within DISC, because DISC is an acronym for the four different parts of our personality. So dominant, inspirational, supportive, and correct. And this particular leader was more people focused and reserved, so really caring and supportive.
Mm.
Module that I'd delivered, and I'd had the workshop, and we'd done some coaching together. At the end of the program, she came up to me and said, "Do you know what? There was an absolute shift for me, and I can't thank you enough." And I said, "Oh, tell me a little bit more about that." And she said, "All of my career, I've been told that I can't be a leader because I had to be more out there and I had to be more driven." She said, "And now I know I can lead, but I just lead in a different way." And that is the beauty of these tools, which, as you say, she can take the mask off and she can be a truly authentic leader, leading in the way that really supports her, knowing that she's working to her strengths.
Oh, that's wonderful that you do this, and for all of us doing it in that space, you're kind of endorsing each other because we have these experiences. There's something I want to ask you before we kind of come to a close. Is you mentioned you took time off to have your children, and I know you've done a lot of work in supporting people who bringing up children. What's the difference now? I'm going to bring values back in where, and I mentioned Gen Z at the beginning because some work I've done around Gen Z is like, I'm not going to work after 7 and at weekends, whereas we were like, well, of course, this is the norm, where people are perhaps changing. Maybe it was the pandemic. We talked about that as well. Where do you see now where people are, from your experience and what you've done, and where we are all these things. We are maybe parents, or we're carers, or we're hobbyists, or whatever it is, as well as an IBM or whatever, So just tell me a bit about that, Sharon. How do you see that changing and what your future predictions are around that?
Oh, if only I had a crystal ball and I could predict
No.
the future. Yeah, I mean, my eldest son is 25, and it's interesting you said about, oh, I'm not working after 7 o'clock, and it's interesting. Sometimes we have discussions around the table. If he, because he's left home now, if he comes home and we're all chatting about work and whatever, and it's really interesting that he and his friendship group have a very similar view, and it's not in a, well, I'm not
No,
working
no,
past 7.
absolutely.
It's just that they value their personal time. It's like a holistic approach to life.
Yeah,
It's really interesting, and I think we do have a lot to learn from
we
that
do.
generation. We know it's not healthy. Burnout in
Mm,
executives, executive coaching, and work. Is huge. I think you're right. I think the pandemic has had an effect. A lot of people have been able to press reset if they were lucky enough to. I know not
yeah,
all of us have been lucky enough to do that. So, there's still lots of people that are, still sort of
no,
running on that
yeah,
hamster wheel. So I do think that there will be a shift, and with coaching, it will allow people perhaps to look at the potential options that maybe they haven't even thought of through working with a coach on how they can look after their well-being, what work-life balance actually means, because it doesn't mean it's
yeah,
50-50. Work-life balance can mean different things to different people, and sort of where their purpose sits. So for some people, they may be telling themselves, well, there's no way that I'm going to be able to work a blended week. For some people, that will work really well, and for others, it won't work so well. So I think the coaching industry has got, I've seen a shift towards more of a holistic approach to coaching people. There's a lot now talking about in trauma-formed coaching. Please make sure if you're doing trauma-informed coaching that you are properly qualified or you work with a properly qualified coach in that area. So yeah, I've definitely seen that there has been a shift now towards much more of coaching the human being, coaching the person behind, that might be sitting in front of you, so the whole person. So when I'm coaching leaders, I'm not just coaching the work person, coaching the whole person.
Yeah.
We're not separate in little if I'm unhappy at home, it's going to leak into my working environment and vice versa. So, the coaching the whole person is so, so important. So that's the direction that I'm now seeing coaching starting to travel in. Not to say that we all have to be a holistic coach, but there are elements now, I think, that are coming in coaching the whole person.
Well, I can't agree with you more. And I think, as you'll know, is that as we're shifting to this, maybe some organizations looking at hybrid, maybe some organizations look flexible. I know many organizations are saying we all need to get back in the office. Those are office based and those jobs that provided some flexibility previously. So the questions are, the reason I asked that was because of your work in this area, because you've done these things and holistic coaching. I think many people are questioning how work plays into life and how life plays into work. So I'm really grateful for you to talking that through and the work you're doing there. So I wanted to ask, I mean, you've achieved so much, you've done so many amazing things. You still are, you're a ball of energy. What's next on the horizon? What do you see coming up for you? What would you like to do? What kind of things? This is not a coaching question. It sounded a bit
How wonderful. Yeah, very interesting question. Wow, I do a vision board every year. Yeah, I do.
What would you cut it out, stick it on a thing?
Yeah, I have it. It's actually in the kitchen at the moment, waiting to be framed. So yeah, but I do one every year. And that sort of helps me to keep focused on. I'm quite visual. My references are quite visual, so that really helps for me. I recently completed my ILM Level 7, so I'm really proud about that. Just waiting for my graduation, so that's lovely.
Congratulations!
And so this year, my focus is on my reaccreditation with the ICF for my PCC. So that's what I'm working towards this year, which is really exciting. Yeah. And continuing to grow and develop our wonderful students at the Coaching Academy and giving them the best possible support through our wonderful training team here. So, yeah, so that's sort of where I'm at the moment. And
that's on a professional. What about personal things? What are you hoping?
Oh, personal. Oh, yeah. Oh, good question. Good question.
Well, in the interest, because we said about the whole person, so that's why I'm asking you.
So for me, yeah. So as I said, my eldest has left home. My youngest is still at university. My husband has actually retired, so he has lots of quality time. So yeah. So we've actively planned a really sort of lots of lovely short breaks this year. It's our 30th wedding anniversary, so we're off on some lovely, gorgeous trips this year as well. So finishing off at the end of the year in November. So yeah, looking forward to that. So lots of lovely quality time.
Congratulations on that as well. Obviously a child bride, but we won't go into the details. You look so young for that.
But kind, Naeema.
No, honestly. So that's wonderful, and I don't know, I felt very uplifted by the whole kind of the conversations that you've had about, but also not just uplifted, like, you can go to like you talk about vision boards and it all feels like manifesting this and the universe that, and it feels lovely. Yours is very grounded in the steps. You've uplifted in this really grounded, structured way. We talked about, regulation and all these kind of things. So honestly, I just want to say thank you so much, Sharon, for coming on. Your insights, your knowledge, your intelligence, your drive, actually, your values, as you talked about, they really shine through. So thank you. I just want to say thank you. Huge thank you.
Pleasure is all mine. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope the listeners take something away that has been helpful and useful for them.
I'm sure they will, and your details are all connected and links and so on. So, let's hope things will, continue to grow. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Powered by Delenta, your all-in-one coaching platform.